Let's Talk podcast guests are invited to share their unique perspectives regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. The ideas expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the practices of Mesquite ISD and are not an endorsement of any particular agenda or viewpoint.
Welcome to the Let's Talk podcast, inspired by Mesquite ISD's Leadership and Empowerment Team, or LET for short.
Our guests include maestros, estudiantes, y miembros de la comunidad sharing their experience for their perspectives.
So, let's have a real conversation about embracing our differences and finding common ground with your host, Dr. LaDonna Gully and Ted Madden.
It is episode 56 of the Let's Talk podcast. Thanks as always for listening. Our guest today was educated in Mesquite. She taught in Mesquite, and now she is a principal in Mesquite, and we will have her introduce herself in just a moment. We will go through our introductions. My name is Ted Madden. I'm a video producer for the school district, and I'm a 48-year-old white man.
My name is Dr. LaDonna Gully. I am the Director over Leadership and Empowerment for our district, and I am a 52-year-old African-American woman.
And hello, my name is Kelly Long. I am the proud principal at the flagship high school, Poteet High School in Mesquite, and I am a 45-year-old white woman.
Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
So I touched on it, but give us kind of the background and how you got to where you are today.
Born and raised in Mesquite, proud born and raised in Mesquite. I'm a 1994 graduate of the Mesquite High School, so I'm a proud Skeeter. Have maroon in my blood, but a lot of green. I went to Florence Black and Agnew and graduated in Mesquite, and then continued my education at A&M Commerce, where I graduated and became a first-year teacher, English teacher at West Mesquite High School, and taught there for many years, and then transferred over to Mesquite High School, and then began my administrative journey. So I was in middle school for a long period of time as an assistant principal, and then I became a principal at Agnew Middle School, which was very cool to go back to my school that educated me. And then the last 2 years, I have moved back to high school, which is where my passion and love is, and I'm at Poteet High School.
And married with 2 kids.
Married, that's the best part. Yes. Married, I have a 16-year-old daughter who is an avid softball player, and then I have a son who is a criminal justice major at Sam Houston State University. Super proud of him. And I've been married for 26 years to my high school sweetheart, who also graduated Mesquite High School in 1993, and that's Jody.
Well, I will tell you a very neat connection between Kelly and I. We met years ago, but she was the assistant principal when my oldest daughter was at high school, and then she was the principal at Agnew when my youngest daughter was going through. So just so neat, great principal, and my daughters absolutely
adore you. And Dr. Gully's daughters are beautiful musicians, the whole works. They're amazing kids. So,
thank you.
Yes.
So we have a lot to talk about today. I wanted, though, to ask you about our students and how are they learning right now in the middle of COVID-19?
You know, I think they're resilient. Kids are resilient, a lot more so sometimes than adults. And so I have seen, and I said this last year to the graduating class, that our future is very solid, and there's a lot of hope in this future because this generation of students have learned that sometimes life gives you failures and disappointments and challenges and obstacles, but despite all that, we overcome. And there's some amazing things that are going on in our school buildings today. Our kids are resilient. And so now, is there challenges? Is it hard? Have we had some struggles along the way? Absolutely. But there's not one challenge or struggle that we haven't overcome and become better for it because of that.
I think that's an interesting topic in general because I think we as a society are going toward the goal of comfort.
Absolutely.
And there aren't a lot of uncomfortable situations that we put if we want something, we order it on Amazon. If we, whatever we want to do, we can kind of do it right now. Anything you want, you can have it right now.
Right.
But it is good. You grow from adversity. And so it's good for all of us, and it's good for our students to go through that. And you got an up-close look at that.
Well, and I can tell you personally, I think I've learned more in my failures than you do sometimes in your wins. And so I think that's something I teach my own personal children, is that you're not going to win every game, you're not going to get every job, but you're going to put yourself out there, you're going to learn from it, and then you're going to adapt and modify what you do, and then you will adapt and overcome at the end of the day. And I'm really seeing that in the classroom. I'm seeing it with teachers. But I'm also seeing it with our students, is that there has been some disappointments of things that don't happen or events that can't occur because of the pandemic. However, they find a way. We're finding a way to how to be successful. You talked about how everything is now. I think we also tend to focus on the negative side of what's going on. And so I've really tried to focus this year on hope and joy, of finding gratitude and joy in those daily moments, and then our hope that tomorrow is going to be better than today. Because without that, what do you have, right? And so I really see kids that are really kind of clinging to that, and our staff.
Yeah, absolutely. We have had a really difficult 2 years, but at the end of the day, it really is about that level of hope and and having joy in the moment and being able to find it. So talk about what are some of the ways that you guys are finding joy at Poteet High School?
It's in the small moments. I think joy happens in our daily encounters that we have with students. A kid that has not been successful on a test, and then they come to you and like, oh, Ms. Long, I went to tutoring and I tried really hard and look what's going on. Or it could be even in small moments of joy in the fact that joy was, we had Frozen, our pirate theater did Frozen. Yes. That was a moment of joy for me, is to see the talent that you get overwhelmed. Joy was when our band went to state. And we went down to San Antonio, and the teams that we competed against, and, where we placed in state, and just the fact of being able to go to state and seeing, I asked about passion, because I think that's what leads you in life. And seeing our kids that are leading with passion, and they're doing it at school because that's their safe place. This is their home. It's something that happens every single day, and that's something they can count on. And so that's joy to me. And then also joy is seeing the teacher that, despite, being out, teacher shortages or substitutes and all this other stuff, and, they're still planning, they're still teaching kids, they're still building these amazing relationships with kids. That's why kids are coming to school. Those moments, that's joy for me.
You kind of led into my next question, because we were talking. You mentioned teacher shortages, and that has to do with COVID, obviously, but it also has to do with fewer applicants applying for teaching jobs. That has to be one of the major concerns for all of education going forward. And I'm curious what you think of that, and what other concerns you have with the educational field.
I think despite the pandemic, we're going to be sitting in a teacher shortage. I think the pandemic exacerbates it, because, when I talked about the negative, I think that's when you're on social media. That's the hardest part about social media for me. There's so much good that can come from social media, putting your message out there, the good things that are going. But it's just like, it's the train wreck effect of, you're going to watch, you want to kind of go and see what's going on, the bad things. And I think education and teachers are getting a bad rap, which is having a lot of people who are choosing not to become a part of this profession. And then it's become political, and that upsets me too, to my core, because it's not about politics, it's about students. And let's be honest, education is the foundation of our society, and what the United States is founded on is education. And so we should be receiving a lot of support, and I feel like we will, but we got to fight for that a little bit. My daughter is a future educator. She wants to be a teacher, and my son's best friend wants to be a teacher coach. And I will do everything I can to put them in positions for them to see, like, this is a joyful position. It is. This is one that's full of passion. The rewards are so much greater than probably any other career. I mean, I'm a little biased, but probably any other career. Like, I choose this profession. I don't choose to leave this profession. And I will actively recruit teachers and bring them to Poteet. Get off of social media, come to Poteet, and see what amazing things are happening. I have had a conversation this weekend with a server at a restaurant saying, come to Poteet. I mean, she was thinking about teaching. She has her degree, maybe. And I'm like, hey, here's my number. Here's my card. Let's walk the halls. I'll show you the good things that are going on. Why? Because we have to put that message out there. And so are we in a shortage? Absolutely. But the pendulum will swing back. And I think if we just start feeling and this might be my Pollyanna attitude, but just the pendulum will swing when we start having politicians who support us, parents who support us, staff members that are spreading the message of joy and all the good things that are going on at schools.
Yeah, I agree. I think sometimes we can be our own worst
Absolutely.
critics, right? And so being in this moment and during this time is very difficult. I mean, I think none of us as educators would say, oh, no, it's been a breeze. It hasn't. But it is our attitude at the end of the day. You know, perception is your reality. And so if your perception of the level of positivity, the hope, the joy that you get from talking with students, I have so much hope for our future because our kids, you know, they get it. They get it. And I want our listening audience to really hear that our students really get it. They understand. They see what is going on around them. They are really making and thinking and considering and thinking critically about the world around them. And they want something different. They want something better. And I think that is what we are affording them.
Absolutely. You know, the greatest generation would be the baby boomers, right? You know, they have that tagline, the greatest generation, because of what their parents went through. I think we are on the precipice of another greatest generation because of what they have overcome and what they're dealing with, the socially, with equity, with the pandemic. And they are, man, if you have a conversation with a high school kid, you're going to think, when you talk about world changers, the world is a better place because of what they've been put through.
Yeah.
And I think there's hope on the other side of it.
Absolutely.
I struggle with the word toxic positivity, and I don't want that to come across as that I'm Pollyanna and I just live in hope. I do live in hope. But I think that we are overwhelmed with the amount of negative towards education and towards students. And if we just take a step back and we just look at all the good that's being surrounded and where we are at, we're in a really good place. We're gonna be okay.
Teaching has always been a hard job, just like being a
Absolutely.
mother.
Yes.
To a lesser degree, being a father, I guess. You guys
No.
tend to get more responsibilities. But you know, I mean, you mentioned it's hard to be a teacher, but I guess what is so frustrating now is seeing that there are battles that they're having to fight that they shouldn't have to fight and they hadn't had to fight in the past.
Absolutely.
And if it just makes it makes an already hard job even harder.
I think it's I've been in education almost 25 years, and this last 2 years, I keep saying the politics of it, and I think that's what's the hardest part about that is when you politicize the job that the teacher is doing in the classroom.
Yes.
And we give them, you know, I give them support and autonomy in what they're doing, is that these are college degreed, master degreed professionals that are continually learning. There's not one teacher in my building who is not continually professionally developing themselves to be a better teacher for their tomorrow, for their kids. And I think that that's hard when you have to defend that. And when you don't feel like there's so much grounded support for you, that's hard.
Yeah.
So that's my goal, and that's my job, is to provide support as much as I can so that teachers have that autonomy to do what's best for their kids, because they are. They definitely are.
Yeah. I think the other part of that is that it's just this huge criticism now just from society that we are not doing our job and that we are, in fact, indoctrinating students. I mean, I see the look on your face. You know, as an educator and as a mom, you know, what are your thoughts about that when you hear, because we hear that quite a bit as educators.
You know, my job as an educator, and I was an English teacher, so it doesn't matter the subject in which you teach. My job was that I wanted my kids to, and this is my job as a parent, I wanted my kids to be able to think critically and to problem solve for themselves. You know, many times English, math, history, science, the subject, that gives you the grounded foundation. But a lot of the skills that are being taught in the classroom are how to think critically, how to infer, how to problem solve, how to take risk, how to work collaboratively as a team. And if you think about it, that's real world readiness for what they're going to do in the future. You know, if they're going to go take a job at Google, that is a collaborative teamwork environment. In that work environment, you want kids that are prepared for that next step. And so the word indoctrination is hard for me, because what I see teachers are doing and what we are doing in education is we're providing opportunities for kids so that they can think for themselves and think critically, because that's what you want from world changers. And that's what they are, is world changers, as you said.
Right.
creating a critical thinker is the exact opposite of indoctrinating.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think it's gotten a bad word from people who indoctrinate their own kids.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, what do you end up? You teach your kids what your values are,
Yeah.
and to the world around you, those values are yours, so they're important to you. But other people may disagree with those values. But you're indoctrinating your kids to have those values as a parent sometimes.
So as a mom of a 19-year-old, and Dr. Gully, you understand because you have grown children.
Yes.
As a mom of a 19 and a 16-year-old, I'm seeing Adam, who is a freshman in college, I'm seeing him live his values and his core beliefs that we have instilled upon him and taught him. But I'm also seeing him creating his own choices and his own path and questioning and asking questions and learning about people from different backgrounds rather than what he was exposed to as a child. Now he's in a college with, people from all around the country are coming to that college. He has professors that are teaching them their way of thought, which is different than what he normally would have thought. And so, which is a great experience. And that's what you want. I want Adam to question. I want Adam to think critically. I want him to create his own values and beliefs because Adam's our future leader. He's our future role changer, and that's what you want from them.
Do you feel like we are preparing our students for the world that they're going to inherit? And if so, how are we doing?
Yes, we are absolutely preparing our kids for the world they're going to inherit. I guess my question lies to you is, what does that world look like that we're going to inherit? Because the world changes, right? And so we are preparing our kids for the unknown. And if I look back when I graduated high school in 1994, the world looks very different now, right? What stays the same is the values that we have and who we are as a society and what we hold to be true. I think that has remained constant, at least with my family. But I'm preparing Adam to, regardless of what challenges, what the world looks like, you're going to be a role changer. And same with Abby, you're going to be, and same with all the students at Poteet.
Yes.
And it's up to you to make the world a better place. You have to, you find it, what is it? You find it, you need to leave it better than where you found it.
Yep.
So how are you leaving it better than what you found it? And I think as someone who's 45, I question that. Am I doing what's better for our society and for our world? Am I leaving Poteet High School better than what I found it? Am I leaving Mesquite ISD better than I found it? The community of Mesquite or wherever I lay my feet.
Part of the current debate around educators is parents should have more control over what their kids are learning. And this is a societal problem right now, is how we treat our experts, right? And I just wrote a note down, like, you can be an expert as a teacher. You have a master's degree. You went through for schooling for it. You can be a medical expert. And we've seen both of those professions, their expertise being dismissed over the last couple of years, whether it's pandemic related or what we're teaching our kids. On the other hand, if you're a surgeon, let's say, or a auto mechanic, you don't have somebody looking over your shoulder telling you how to do your job, right? So in some fields that haven't been politicized, expertise is still appreciated. And in these other fields, it's being questioned and dismissed. And I don't know if I have necessarily a question about that, but it's one of the frustrations of you can just kind of pick or choose what you decide to get involved with and what expertise you decide to ignore.
Yeah. I think a lot of it relies on trust, right? Yes. So do you have trust in the educators that are in the building? As the principal, have I been vulnerable and open with the parents to say, here's our expectations, here's our core values at Poteet, here is what your students are going to be exposed to, here's their learning, here's what the TEKS looks like, here's their opportunities that they have, to be very transparent, open, to help build that trust with parents. Should parents be a collaborative member of their child's education? Absolutely. I think, and it's always been like that. As a classroom teacher, I would never shut the door if a parent asked me, like, hey, can we talk about, what about this book? Let's talk about it. And then that really creates a better learning opportunity for their student at the house. So if they're able to talk to their parent about, hey, in forensics, this is what I'm learning about, and my teacher showed me this video, let's watch it together, let's talk about it. I think that's what you want. I think that creates an enriched learning environment for a student. And so I guess my thought would be is how we should build trust with our parents. We should have open lines of communication.
Yes.
I have questioned me, asked me questions. I think every teacher in education welcomes that. Every parent. I mean, I've had many conversations with my child's teachers. However, I do have a lot of trust in their school that they're going to always do what's best for kids. And I think if I have a difficult conversation with a parent, when they can see we're coming from both sides of the same coin, that we're going to do what's best for your kid. And I think it's great that you're the student's advocate, because that is the best advocate is their parent.
Yes.
And I am your student's advocate too. So let's find a conversation where we're on the equal plane and we're working towards the greater good for your kid.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. It's the conversation. Yeah. It's one conversation at a time. Is the dialogue and the discourse that has to happen in order for us to have a better understanding of each other. And we just can't look at each other and look at someone's exterior and make a judgment about them, because we don't know their experience. We don't know their background. We don't know, what they've had to overcome. And I think that, telling our story really is always a great opportunity to bring that to light, because I can always find something that I can value and that I personally identify with when I hear your story. And hopefully people feel the same way when they hear mine.
Absolutely.
I think it's really, really important as we move forward, in education and finishing up this school year and looking forward to what's to come. What are some things that you see that are coming that you feel are like, right on point in terms of where we need to be in education?
I think I love our focus, and I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, Dr. Gully, is on leadership. Our leadership empowerment with not only our students, but with our teachers too. And that we're focusing on the leadership skills of our kids. And I think as a parent with Adam and Abby, that's our number one focus with them is how are you leading others? Mm-hmm. And are you being a good example as a leader? And what does leadership look like? It's not always standing in the front. Sometimes it's standing in the back. And what does that look like in support? And I think with our students, I am seeing an emphasis on creating, we've used the word world changers, and I love that because that it starts with leadership. It starts and ends with leadership and positive leadership. And leadership can happen in every facet of the school. Mm-hmm. So I think empowered teachers create empowered students. Mm-hmm. And so that's really been something that I'm really excited about seeing it come to full fruition over the years and what that's going to look like.
Yeah. And I agree. I think that it comes with, how ironic, a lot of empathy.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And patience and openness and being really a great listener and taking a time out to really focus in on who you're communicating with and developing that deep relationship, not just something that's very surfaced. I invited, oftentimes, I've been invited to dinner and and I invite people to dinner. And why do you do that? Because you get to have such great conversations and you learn things about people. Like Ted and I, we know each other quite well.
You've been over for dinner.
Yes, I have. And, it has been it's just been wonderful because you get to know each other at a different level. And I think that that's really important. One of the things that I would love to invite people to do is invite somebody over that you've never, right? I know that person, but you don't really know them. Invite them to the table.
And be vulnerable. I think that was, I study a lot of Brene Brown, and she talks a lot about vulnerability. She was Dare to Lead. And she talks a lot about vulnerability. And I reflect upon myself over the years, and I'm kind of an open book, and I kind of lend myself to that. But I have some friends in education that you have this front that you have to show and who you are, and you have to be very professional, and you have to, that's what society tells us. And sometimes that's hard for people to understand your story and your past. And having vulnerable, honest conversations has probably, with people that are different than me, has probably led to the greatest personal growth of mine, because I was able to see a different side. and see it through their eyes a little bit. I will never identify with, I understand you and I understand your live story. No,
Right.
but I'm here to say thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story with me so that I have a better understanding. So when you speak upon that, the word vulnerable just keeps popping in my head. I think it's important that we're vulnerable with all stakeholders in a school building, parents, staff, students, so that we can have a better understanding. And that's really where you make true change, I think.
I want to talk about your husband, Jody.
Let's talk.
Because I got to meet him when I was doing Mickey Delamar's Hall of Honor video. And his backstory, during the interview, he told me about being a student who didn't always have something to eat. He said his dad was in jail, his mom was on drugs. He was open about that. And that there were sometimes he would stay at the field house, and Mickey would make sure he and other kids like him were fed. And you knew him at this time, and you married him soon after this time.
Yes.
How did his background affect you and help you become who you are as an adult and as an educator?
I don't think I realized it when I was 19 or 18. We were married very early. I don't think I realized the impact of the gift of Jody in my life would have on me and my career as an educator. I was raised in, very mom and dad, 2.5 kids, very middle-class family. And having someone like Jody who has trauma in his life repeated in different forms and overcoming it and seeing his fight, his grit, and what he has done to overcome it. And the best part, and we talked about being vulnerable, and I think in the last 10 years, he's really worked towards being vulnerable with his story and sharing his past. But to see the relationships, the power of relationships that educators had in Jody's life is one of the reasons that I loved my years at West Mesquite and working with kids who needed a second chance. And I loved all of my years in Mesquite, and I find myself drawn to kids who need a second chance, who are working really hard to overcome and to fight those battles that are placed before them because of Jody. Because definitely he is he's been my biggest gift, and he is overcome so much and is so successful. And so it's been a privilege to watch him overcome and to be his support system through that. I've always asked him, what is it? What was the one thing? Because oftentimes you see kids who repeat the cycle and they're not able to overcome, and it takes them lots of years.
Yes.
And Jody, he became a police officer. His dad's in prison. He overcomes, but he becomes a police officer. He steered clear of drugs his entire life because he saw what drugs would do to a family. He has created a family that's so polar opposite of how he was raised. He is this supported, loving husband and had zero example of that growing up. So what was your it? And his takeaway has always been, it's people who love me. It's people God placed in my path to overcome. But he also has that resiliency in him to overcome too. And so now at the age of 45, 25 years later, I see the why. I'm like, okay, God, I know why you placed Jody in my life, and is because he helped me become a better educator, more empathetic, understanding, resilient, and then also a story to say to kids is like, this is not your forever. When you're in the middle of it, kids feel like this is their forever.
Yes.
And I know there's times in Jody's life he has felt like, I'll always be like this. I'm always going to have these challenges. It's not your forever. You keep working hard. You keep doing what's right. You keep listening and relying on other people for help. You can and will overcome.
You made me think of something about just education and why it is so foundationally important, because it really is the second chance.
Absolutely.
It's the second chance, third chance, fourth chance, fifth chance for so many students who don't have what we consider the perfect home life. And I think oftentimes we don't think about that as society, about the power of a great school, the power of a great district, and what happens when that district really invests in the community in such a way that it gives students who are marginalized, who have not had, quote unquote, the best, it gives them the second chance. Oftentimes what we do is we make up things, right? Or we put together these false narratives. But we really need to look at each and every child.
Absolutely.
That's what equity is. Equity is about looking at each and every child and giving that student what they need, not a one size fits all. And I think it's so important. I think that for people to really understand that in order to give the second chance, you have to be able to look at the individual child, and you have to know that that teacher that's there is highly supporting that second chance.
And third chance and fourth chance
Yes.
and fifth chance. And I think that's the power of a school can provide unconditional love
Yes.
to kids who I've often, love has always been conditional. For Jody, love was always conditional. I'll give you love if you do this for me. I'll do this if you do this. And unconditional love is regardless of what happens, whatever choices you make, I'm going to love and support you. And so one of the things that we talk about with the staff is I talk about leading with love. And all that we do, we start with love first. And we love our kids unconditionally. And oftentimes our kids, when they make a poor choice, it has nothing to do with that moment and that poor choice. It has to do with something else that's going on outside of school. And they're going to test you until you let them know, like, hey, we're still going to be here for you. Now, I'm going to hold you accountable, because I think that's very important that we hold kids accountable and we teach them that, yeah, if I'm speeding down the road, I'm going to get a speeding ticket. But guess what? I'm still going to get in the car the next day and I'm going to drive, but I'm going to do better because I know better.
Right.
And then, and then we continue to support them and love them through it and help them figure out the why behind the behavior or something like that. So, what if I could put one thing to what made Jody a success was unconditional love from different people in his life at different moments in his life. So.
Anything else?
And I do actually have something else. I know that you lost a student earlier this year, and I know your staff was really deeply affected by that. How do you think you all have moved forward in what you may do differently? I mean, or did you see anything and now you're like, as a result, this is what we're going to do differently?
It's a gut check in the fact of, we just talked about really truly seeing and knowing every one of our students at Poteet. And, we have 1,650 students. To say that I know and understand the struggles of all 1,650 kids and that they are connected to an adult in our building, it makes you reevaluate and say, there are kids out there, I don't know their story. And I don't know their struggles, and am I doing enough to provide support? This is where you're talking about the teacher struggle. I think we always have in our head, we can always do more and I can always do better. I think as a staff, it really takes you to slow down a little bit and look at those relationships that we have with our kids. And are they surface level relationships? Are they level relationships to where we can really see who the kid is? And we can instill hope. In this situation, it was a lack of hope that brought to that outcome of, and that hurts my heart in the fact that we have a kid out there that they thought that their tomorrow was always going to be exactly like it is today. And there was not a hope that their tomorrow is going to be better than today. And I think that's what education provides, is hope. And I think educators help and provide that hope for our kids who feel very hopeless. And so what can we do at Poteet High School? What do? Is we try very hard to understand, to see our kids, to love our kids, give them opportunities, and continue to get them hope.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
That's what you do with a tragedy, right? You
Absolutely.
acknowledge it, you respect the tragedy, but then how can you be better after it?
Absolutely.
And that's what you're doing with your staff?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, well, that's Poteet Principal Kelly Long. Thanks for coming in
This is fun. Thank you.
and winging it like you said you were going to do.
We winged it. I appreciate it, guys.
We wung it, right? Is
Yes,
that the
we
right
did. We
word?
won it. Yeah. The English teacher in me saying, yeah, that's how you say it.
Well, if you've got any, as a listener, if you've got any comments or questions or things you'd like us to discuss, just send us an email, letstalk@mesquiteisd.org. You can also connect with us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter by using the search term LetMISD. For Dr. LaDonna Gully, I'm Ted Madden. Let's talk again next week.